Have you ever felt like your dreams are watching you from the other side of a glass wall? So close you can almost touch them, yet somehow always just out of reach? You see the vision clearly, the life you know deep down you're meant to live. You feel it in your bones, an unshakable knowing, the abundance, the love, the freedom. It visits you in quiet moments, sometimes in dreams, sometimes when you close your eyes just long enough to believe. But then, nothing changes. Not really. You wake up the same, walk the same path, live the same loop, and it starts to feel cruel, doesn't it? To sense a reality so vivid in your mind, and yet watch your current one stubbornly refuse to reflect it. Here's the part no one tells you. It's not your imagination that's the problem. It's not even your intention. It's your frequency. Because the quantum field doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. Most people live their lives in a kind of energetic tug-of-war. They speak affirmations aloud while silently broadcasting fear. They paste vision boards over the wallpaper of self-doubt. They ask the universe for change, but hold on to the very identity that's been blocking it. Wanting something and being the person who already has it. Those are two very different frequencies. And the field can tell. It doesn't react to surface rituals. It doesn't care how many times you've scripted your desires into a journal or whispered "I am enough" into a mirror. The universe is listening with different ears. It hears the tremble behind your words, the hesitation in your breath, the doubt that lives in your nervous system. That's what it mirrors. You can't trick energy. You can only align with it. So if you're wondering why your vision hasn't arrived yet, maybe ask yourself this instead. Am I living as the version of me who already belongs to that reality? Because when you do, when you really begin to feel into that version, not just in meditation, but in motion, in behavior, in presence, something begins to shift. And it's not subtle. It's a reorganization, a soft unraveling of old timelines, a gentle but irreversible migration from wanting to being. You stop chasing. You stop waiting. You stop negotiating with the universe. Because now you're not asking for the life you desire. You're embodying the person who lives it. This is not about pretending. Pretending creates tension. It's acting out a fantasy with the energy of disbelief. And the quantum field can feel that conflict. It hears you saying one thing while vibrating something else. True embodiment doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the body, the breath, the emotions. From training your nervous system to feel safe in a reality that hasn't yet arrived. You rehearse not with words, but with presence. You begin to stand like your future self, speak like them, choose like them, walk like them, even when the world still looks the same. And that's when the magic happens. Because in quantum terms, you've just collapsed a new timeline. Not by force, not by hustle, but by resonance. This is the secret that changes everything. Your reality isn't waiting for proof. It's waiting for alignment. When you stop needing confirmation from the outside, when you stop demanding signs, stop checking if it's working, stop waiting for applause or validation, you unlock something far more powerful. You become the sign. You carry the signal of your future so completely that the universe has no choice but to respond. Not because you earned it, not because you worked harder than anyone else, but because your vibration stabilized, your energy clarified, your intention matured from hope into truth. And it's that truth, not your words, not your effort, that reorganizes reality around you. The universe isn't judging your worthiness. It isn't keeping score of how many times you tried. It's simply responding to the frequency you hold most dominantly, not what you say, what you are. So if you're still feeling stuck, ask yourself, what part of me is still broadcasting fear? What story am I still rehearsing unconsciously? Am I saying I want love while vibrating with the scars of past betrayal? Am I saying I am abundant while holding my breath when I check my bank account? The field doesn't argue with you. It doesn't correct your contradiction. It simply reflects it. That's why this isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about bringing conscious awareness to your emotional baseline. Because you can't create a new life while secretly clinging to the emotional chemistry of your old one. You must become a safe space for the future to arrive. Stillness does that. Presence does that. Not the frantic hustle, not the emotional roller coaster of desire and disappointment. Stillness. Because when you stop reacting to what's missing and start embodying what's already true within you, everything begins to change. It's subtle at first. You start feeling differently in old situations. You notice new people showing up, people who seem strangely familiar, like they belong in the life you always imagine. Opportunities arise, not from struggle, but from flow. You're not manifesting anymore. You're remembering. You're not reaching. You're radiating. And in that radiation, life responds, not as a reward, but as a match. You become the person first, and then the reality follows, not as compensation, but as inevitability. Now let's talk about identity, not the one tied to your job title or your history, not the one shaped by your wounds or the story you keep repeating to yourself, but the identity that lives beneath all that, the one you've always felt in quiet moments before the world told you who to be. That version of you, that's the one the quantum field responds to. You see, most people try to earn their future. They think, once I heal more, once I'm more disciplined, once I prove I'm ready. But that very mindset becomes the trap. The deeper you believe you're not enough yet, the longer you'll wait. Not because the universe is holding back, but because your signal says, not yet. But here's the truth no one ever taught us. You don't have to become anything. You just have to remember who you were before the world layered on fear, shame, and doubt. The version of you who lives that dream life, they already exist, energetically. You don't have to create them. You only have to align with them. And that alignment doesn't happen through force. It happens through quantum rehearsal. Quantum rehearsal is the daily practice of being your future self now, not just thinking about them. You wake up and move as if you've already arrived, not to fake it, but to normalize it, to stabilize the identity your nervous system used to think was a fantasy. That's how the timeline collapses. You feel abundance before the money shows up. You feel love before the relationship arrives. You feel peace before the chaos dissolves. Not because you're lying to yourself, but because you're showing your body what's possible. Because the quantum field doesn't need time. It needs clarity. It needs coherence. And every time you breathe like your future self, speak like your future self, decide like your future self, you're creating internal evidence that says, this is who I am now. The external world simply catches up. This is why stillness is so powerful. It's not emptiness. It's the most fertile space you can create. Because in stillness, you stop scrambling for proof and start generating truth. You stop reacting to what's missing and start receiving what's aligned. But here's the part most people miss. Stillness isn't always comfortable. In fact, it often stirs up the very emotions you've been avoiding. When you stop filling your schedule with distractions, old fears rise. Stories you thought you buried resurface. And your nervous system, addicted to the familiar chaos, might panic. That's okay. It's not failure. It's feedback. It means your system is recalibrating. It means you're finally clearing space for the new. Don't run from that discomfort. Sit with it. Witness it. Let it move through you without letting it define you. Because once you realize you're not your fear, you're the awareness beneath it, you become free. That's emotional sovereignty. It's not pretending everything's fine. It's choosing alignment even when your old patterns scream for attention. It's saying, yes, I feel the fear, and I still choose to breathe like the person I'm becoming. That's power. Quiet, grounded, undeniable power. And when that power becomes your baseline, not just a moment in meditation, but a way of being, your field stabilizes. Your energy becomes clear. And the quantum field, always listening, always faithful, begins to rearrange itself around you. Not because you chased it, but because you matched it. You'll notice it first in small ways. You'll feel more calm in situations that used to shake you. You'll say no to things that once made you collapse. You'll attract conversations, opportunities, synchronicities that feel tailor-made. And you'll stop needing signs to believe. Because you'll realize you are the sign. You are the frequency your future has been waiting for. You don't need to scream into the universe. You only need to settle into the energy of the life you desire, with consistency, with trust, with truth. And here's where the loop completes. The more you embody that version of yourself, the less you wait, and the more you live. You become unshakable, not because nothing affects you, but because your alignment runs deeper than your triggers. You become magnetic, not because you're perfect, but because your energy is coherent, and you become deeply, quietly fulfilled. Not because you got the dream, but because you became the dream. From there, life unfolds, not as a reward, as a mirror. So now the question becomes simple, but profound. Can you trust the unseen long enough to let it become seen? Because the moment you stop needing proof to believe, you begin to emit the frequency that creates it. That's what the quantum field listens for. Not your effort plus faith, not how loudly you affirm or how many hours you meditate. It listens for coherence. And coherence is born when your thoughts, emotions, and identity all agree. When what you think lines up with what you feel and flows naturally into how you show up. When there's no longer a gap between the you that dreams and the you that decides. This is the moment your future stops being a concept and starts being a presence. A presence you carry into every conversation, every moment, every breath. It shows in your posture. It speaks in your tone. It ripples through the space around you, shaping the room before you say a word. People will begin to notice, not because you've done anything obvious, but because your being has changed. And here's the irony. The more stable your inner frequency becomes, the less you need the outside world to change. Because now, your fulfillment isn't waiting on an outcome. It's radiating from within. You become full before you're filled. You become loved before you're loved. You become successful before you're recognized. And from that place, the field responds. Not to satisfy you, but to reflect you. Because now you're not manifesting to get anything. You're manifesting as an extension of who you already are. And that changes everything. You no longer fear time passing because you're no longer waiting, you're living. You no longer measure results by how fast they come, but by how deeply you're becoming. You no longer chase alignment because you are alignment. And in that state, what used to feel like resistance dissolves into flow. You begin to notice doors opening that were always there, but you had been too misaligned to see them. You begin to move through the world differently, not with urgency, but with certainty. Not with pressure, but with peace, because you know now that your job was never to force the outcome. Your job was to maintain the signal, to become a tuning fork for the timeline you were born to live. So now ask yourself, if the version of me who already has what I desire woke up in this body tomorrow, how would I walk through the day? What would I stop waiting for? What would I stop negotiating with? What thoughts would no longer feel familiar? What emotions would no longer make decisions for me? What would become normal? The answers to those questions aren't just clues, they're invitations. Invitations to stop living from memory and start living from potential. To stop rehearsing the identity that's been keeping you safe and start rehearsing the one that sets you free. And yes, it takes courage, because your old self will resist. It will whisper, what if it doesn't work? It will tempt you with logic and timelines and caution. But that's just your past asking for permission to linger. You don't owe it that. You only owe your future one thing: presence. You owe it your breath, your honesty, your willingness to believe before there's evidence, to choose before there's validation, to love before there's applause. You owe it the version of you who doesn't need to see it to be it, because that's how you shift timelines, not by waiting for the external world to prove you're ready, but by deciding that you are, right now, not tomorrow, not once everything lines up, not when fear finally goes away, but now, with the breath you're taking, with the story you're choosing, with the identity you're reclaiming. Because everything you desire already exists. It's not hiding, it's waiting. Waiting for you to meet it in frequency. Waiting for you to stop observing life through the lens of your wounds and start creating it through the lens of your becoming. So slow down, breathe, feel into the version of you that's already whole, and know this: you don't need to get louder. You just need to get clearer. Because the moment your signal stabilizes, the field will hear you. And the moment the field hears you, it responds without hesitation, without judgment, with precision, because you didn't chase a new life. You remembered the one that's always been yours. And that remembrance, that's the real miracle. If this story spoke to something deep in you, if it felt like something you've always known but never quite heard said this way, then stay with it. Let it live in you. Let it move through your breath, your thoughts, your choices. And if it helped you, share it with someone else who's ready to come home to their power. Have you ever lived a day as if the future was already here? Tell your story in the comments. And remember, your job isn't to force anything. It's simply to align, to rehearse, to observe, and let the field do what it always does: respond.